All right, good morning, everyone. I call this meeting to order. It is 7:32 a.m. on Monday, September 23rd. Will the secretary please do the roll call?
Here.
Strasser here.
And Harris here. And Ryer's here. Thank you. Are there any corrections to the minutes for the August 26th meeting?
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda, general agenda items. First item on there is myself in terms of Police and Fire Commission. This will be my last meeting. I want to thank you all. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to serve on this commission and to serve as president. I'm not really good at goodbyes, so I'll just say, obviously it's been a privilege, and I know that the city is going to be in amazing hands, as it always has been, with the commissioners that are here moving forward. And I just want to thank the two chiefs, Chief Barnes and Chief Kopp, as well as their team, the officers that serve on the police department, the firefighters that serve and protect us, as well at the fire department, and each and every one of the commissioners here. Thank you so much. It's really been an honor and a privilege.
I guess I'll start for the commission, William, and just say, first of all, thank you for accepting the appointment in 2020 to be on the Police and Fire Commission. You made an immediate impact, leading us through different both challenges and through hiring processes, and always with respect and confidence. And we thank you and wish you all the best. I think you're going to be great wherever you go, and not only on the Police and Fire Commission, but you bless the city of Wausau in other ways where you made a big impact. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Bill, William, we had a conversation last week, and I just want to echo those comments too, and I totally agree with Kathy. You really did make a great impact, and it really has been an honor to serve with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
So we didn't have a lot of time, William,
No, I know.
but we did scramble a bit, and we did get you something.
Oh,
We thought we'd get you something that you could maybe put to some good use.
thank you so much.
Yeah, so go ahead and open it
Thank you. It says your leadership at the Police and Fire Commission has truly been remarkable. Start July 21st, 2020, became president June 28th, 2021, which also June 28th is my birthday. So I started and a pen
We know he likes
Thank
to write, so
for sure.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
We have a card, too.
So I'll go real quick. On behalf of the police department, I would just like to thank you for your leadership. You were a transplant to this community, and more than anyone else I've ever seen, integrated yourself in it and decided that if there's things that need to be fixed, that you had to be part of the solution, whether it's serving on committees or boards or your time with the county board, and taking a stand for what you believe is right, even when it might not be popular with those around you. That's what a leader does. And then you became the president of the PFC. First off, you made a great decision. You promoted me. I'll always be appreciative of that. But I would say this, in 25 years at the police department, I think the most difficult years for a president of the PFC have been the last several. One, there's a need for a new fire chief, there's need for a new police chief, and shepherding those processes. But one of the significant challenges for any PFC is you're also the group that deals with investigations. When an investigation comes through the police department and that individual is not satisfied, they can appeal it to the Police and Fire Commission, as well as any complaints that might come in against either of the chiefs go straight to the Police and Fire Commission. And you've had a few of those that took a tremendous amount of effort. I believe the right conclusions were reached, but the amount of work that you had to put into that so that we could reach that appropriate conclusion demonstrates your commitment to this community. And so for those reasons, I can guarantee you that you will be missed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harris, on behalf of the fire department, we'd also like to thank you for your time. I can echo a lot of things that Chief Barnes just said, as well as what everyone else has said, so it kind of sucks going last, I guess. But with that being said, you kind of, from what I've seen and from what I know about you, you're natural at a lot of things, and leadership is one of them. It just comes natural to you. Your communication skills are second to none, and just taking every challenge right up front and just coming right at it is just a tremendous skill, and we really do appreciate everything you've done for us and the city and these two departments. So thanks again for your service.
Thank you.
I'll go last. Commissioner, thank you for your service, thank you for your leadership, and thank you for taking the job seriously. As the chief pointed out, I mean, some days this can be pretty mundane, but it can turn very serious and very life-changing for whether it's citizens or officers. It's an important position. It's an important job for the city. You're the face of the city for the police and fire departments out there, and you did that well. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all. I really appreciate it. Try not to get too misty-eyed here. But I really appreciate it, and I appreciate this community. So thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, discussion on the PFC hiring process.
So I probably should have looked at the agenda a little bit. So if you look under the next agenda item behind that, on our recruitment process, those are one and the same.
Okay.
And that process is both of interest to the police department and the fire department, and we've collaborated in order to not have one set of guidelines for the fire department and one set of guidelines for the police department, so that we don't need multiple chapters in the manual. So let's see who's. Yeah, you'll notice in your materials, you have what our recommendation is. The manual's very smart right now in that it uses the word may. It lists a whole bunch of options in the hiring process and says may utilize some of these. You'll see that Captain Paul's put together with Deputy Chief Payton a potential timeline example. And the only thing I would say to that is, I have 2 points. One is, we want to hire people usually at the start of our local recruit academy. But when we start a process in May, so is everybody else. So we will probably start our processes in May and try and have them concluded in 4 to 5 weeks, so that those individuals who are going to be going to recruit school, they accept the offer at the end. They're ours, they just haven't started yet. So we want some flexibility to do that, really just looking at the market for employees. If the time were to come where we see, and there are a lot of economic factors that I think play into this, if we get back to a day where there's 150, 200, 300 applicants for jobs, well, then we're going to have to be flexible with our process to narrow that down. There's no way to interview 300 people effectively. And that's where a test comes into play. We haven't needed that in several years because we can interview 25 people, and when that's all we get for applicants. And lastly, if we have an unforeseen retirement or resignation, or we lose someone, there's really 2 choices for either the fire chief or myself. Fire chief doesn't get that choice right now because he's trying to fill a whole pile of slots. But historically, we've been able to use that opening to help balance our budget for the year. So if we leave that position open for a period of time, there's net savings every month that helps us at the end of the year. If that's not necessary because we're in a good position, we might run an extremely expedited process, but limit the applicants that we're willing to look at, create a criteria that says you have to be certifiable, which means you are either either were in good standing a police officer who was certified, or you've successfully completed recruit school within 2 years, 3 years. So once you complete it, you get 3 years to get gainfully employed. We did that most recently. We were fortunate to come out with one, and they're already in a uniform on the road as opposed to go into several months' worth of recruit school. So with that being said, I'll let the architects, and I don't know if Chief Cop has anything. I do, but I'll let Justin. So whoever's going up now.
You might got one of these already, but you're just, it's like, change the,
Is it this one?
yeah, but I just changed the.
Okay.
I will say just one thing. As Deputy Chief Cluse is handing that out, I will just say one quick thing. I think Chief Barnes set the stage very effectively, and it kind of gave the lay of the land, as it were. What we've seen in over the last, probably 10, 15 years or so is really that shift from several hundred applying to maybe 10% of that. And so whereas when, like, Captain Pauls and I applied, we really had to market ourselves to the department to show that we were the best candidates for the position. And there's been somewhat of a role reversal over the last several years where these departments are all competing for the same few candidates, that shrinking pool of candidates. And the departments really need to market themselves and come up with some efficiencies to still identify quality candidates, but in that we're kind of competing with all of these other departments for that smaller pool of candidates, we want to ensure that we have kind of that flexibility and efficiency built in that will allow us to stay competitive with the other departments. And Captain Pauls has really been operative and key in running those recruitment processes over the last several years, and came up with this alternate timeline that allows for some of those variables in there.
So we actually worked together, and if you look at page 3 of our proposal that was in the agenda and what Deputy Chief just handed out, they mirror each other. We've got maybe an additional step when it comes to a polygraph, but really, in the end, they're very similar. I think the PFC manual, as is, does a great job in letting us use the steps when we need to. And the biggest thing in the end, like Chief mentioned, is many times we're looking at 2 timelines to get somebody into a fall academy or a spring academy here in Wausau. So we kind of try to end our processes around those times. The biggest thing is if we're looking at condensed timelines, is being able to have a special meeting to fit that timeline with the PFC and getting that interview, I think is one of the big issues that we need to address and make sure that that is accommodated when it is needed.
So within the fire department, currently we're at 7 vacancies at the moment. The Chippewa Valley Technical College has a hiring process. We had an applicant on there. The chief cop just contacted shortly after the application came in, and he's already accepted a job somewhere else. So the need to streamline this and make this as efficient as possible is needed. And really what we're not adding or subtracting really any steps, just kind of condensing some of the steps into a one-day oral interviews, for an example, and kind of trying to schedule things in advance so that we shorten that period, that timeline. So if you have any questions on that, I can take any questions that are on the proposal.
So based on this, nothing changes in the manual? Or is that what you're saying, the manual's fine? And this is just like
As I was going through it, the wording in the manual says that we may offer any of these steps as part of our process, which again has allowed us to not use a written exam when we don't need it. So yeah, as far as I am looking at it, the manual does a great job of allowing us to do that,
Yeah.
as is.
I mean, I think that's something that, look at this, the commission definitely should discuss and look through and just make sure. I would say I did have like a couple of questions going through as well, looking at this, just in terms of steps. and I'll say in the beginning, just right offhand, I'm largely in favor of obviously a more streamlined process because there's a need to ensure that we do remain competitive and continue to have the best candidates here possible. I did notice one of the steps, and if you kind of just, and I guess if you kind of just explain, sort of, or go through some of the differences, but one of them, for instance, getting rid of the final command interview. You go through if that's needed or not, or why that was changed.
So that was not an easy decision to make, but what alleviated the concerns is we generally get a bunch of information and we get a background and then we get in the command interview, and really what we're trying to do at that point is validate that all the information we've received up to that point is accurate. So I can just speak for the police department. We are going to rely more heavily on and invest more time and resources into the background. It's already a very thorough background. We just want it to be more thorough. And the way I would describe that is they put on their applications, here are my references. Well, when one of those doesn't say something good, that's it. We call that a clue. But we ask those individuals, who else do you know that knows this person? And then we go to them and we ask, who else do you know that knows this person? So that we can start expanding the pool and really get a great idea of what is this person's character and is what they're presenting to us really the who they are. And we're fortunate from the law enforcement standpoint that we have the polygraph available to us because it's not something that necessarily gets discussed with you, but we have had a lot of people not continue in our process as a result of their performance on the polygraph examination. And that might be a very interesting thing for you to, it's not that the polygraph says you were lying, it's that the process prior to the polygraph, the polygraph's pretty simple. Did you fill this out accurately? And they say yes or no. And it's what is learned during that process. And that might be of interest to you to understand what exactly is that and how does that give us the confidence to hire them. But through the polygraph and a more extensive background, I can say at the police department, I'm very comfortable that we use 1 day of heavy interviews and a background and a polygraph. And then last but not least, we have the premier psychologist in Wisconsin, it's Dr. Childs, who meets with them and produces a very thorough report that not only says that they're qualified to be a police officer or a firefighter, but it also shows us where this individual, based on their personality, might struggle so that we know that on the front end and can try and circumvent any of those challenges they may have. But if any one of the 20 areas shows high risk for failure, then they don't continue. And I think you guys have seen some people that we offer conditional jobs to, and then we're bringing someone back shortly thereafter. And in most cases, that's because the psychological examination indicated that they wouldn't be a good fit for us. So I think we have enough safeguards in place that I'm comfortable not doing that. Although, in my perfect world, it'd be an even more extensive process, and we'd have plenty of time because we have 350 people that want to work for us. That's just not the day that we're dealing with today.
All right. Do you have a question about the background investigations? I guess if you could just comment on that in terms of are there any changes or will it be affected? Because I noticed the background investigations used to be over a month, and they will be condensed to a week.
Yeah, I think the amount of time that for the most part, our detectives or our investigators do the background, the amount of time invested in those backgrounds will probably go up, but the amount of days it takes will go down. So when someone's going to be assigned a background investigation, it's going to be their top priority, where the way in which we had done that previously was you still have your whole caseload that you're working, and you got a half hour. I'm going to make a phone call, and I can document that, and then you might not get back to the background until the next day, where I fully expect our investigators are going to be getting in cars and driving around the state, and hopefully not too far. But sometimes it makes it challenging when we're hiring people out of Arizona. But the work that those backgrounds, the information that it provides for us from that work is is really invaluable. It's what tells us whether the car really doesn't have any problems before we buy it, because that's our opportunity to test drive it.
Yeah, and on that end, I think it's great because a lot of times, that whole month period did seem long in terms of if you're a candidate waiting, through this process to hear back, possibly unnecessarily. I would probably say just one thing I thought about was, as I think throughout my time on this commission where there have been sort of some questions here and there, or at least my mind sometimes have been some of those candidates that suddenly, that come from another state, suddenly leave,
Yep.
So I think maybe a suggestion would just, forward yourself in terms of if they're an out-of-state applicant, the possibility of a longer process or some sort of disclaimer there that it could be slightly longer if you're an out-of-state, if those processes end up taking a little bit longer to dig into.
So, one of the things the commission can direct us to do, and we'll do it, right now, it's something that I would make a decision on, and most often, it's the most cost-effective decision. But when they're out of state, we generally don't put a background investigator on an airplane and have them rent a car and go drive around and meet everyone face-to-face, as they might do if they're local or if they're in the state of Wisconsin. If that's something that's important to the commission, that these background investigations aren't just phone calls with people there. To me, at least my view of the commission and the oversight that you provide, that's part of your oversight, is determining how you'd want that handled. Up to this point, I don't think we've had the need to sit down and say to the commission, here's exactly what's involved in a police background, or here's exactly what's involved in a fire background. But as we start to make shifts and we minimize the amount of time it takes, I think that's appropriate. I feel very comfortable that we'll go through everything with you, and you'll understand the polygraph, and we'll talk about the psychological examinations and what goes into our background, and you will feel very comfortable that we've done everything in a professional manner, in a thorough manner. But I think it's appropriate, probably moving forward, to have that be some of our meetings when we have the opportunity to present.
But overall, I think it's a good step in the right direction. Again, in terms of making sure that the city remains competitive and get the best people possible. I guess, is there any other questions from the commission?
Just one other statement that's really a shift in thinking, but I think it's a shift in young people entering the workforce. When I got hired here, my process started in September, and I got hired on March 10th the following year. So that was the timeline. But I knew that when I took this job, I'm like, well, this is where I'm going to retire from. And everyone around me knew that when they got hired, that's where they're going to retire from. And that is not the case today with the workforce. They're not blindly loyal and expecting to stay in that same place. I think we have pretty good retention. We have staff that are pretty satisfied where they're at. But at the same time, as that has shifted, I think we have to shift a little bit, especially when we're expediting processes. And we have an 18-month probationary window, which their employment can be ended for any reason. And my direction to the staff is we need updates on those individuals after they get out of field training and they're on their own. And we have to make a intentional decision prior to their 18th month. Like, is this the individual that we want here serving this community for the next 30 years? And that's not something that happened before, but I think that's something we need to do now. And we have to be willing to make hard decisions if it's not in the best interest for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to Human Resources Director
All right.
James Henderson. Good morning.
Good morning. I reviewed along with my staff, with these streamlined recommendations. We found nothing wrong with the police is fine, but there were a couple of issues that we needed to address with the process that fire put forward. First, the number one is the initial screening that says that human resources and the chief will do that. That's something that in the past we've not allowed. And the reasoning for that is because when you have an applicant tracking system, from an HR standpoint, you don't want a department director, and I'm not saying that they would do that, but putting pressure on a lower level employee to, hey, I know this person, let's put them forward, even though they may or may not be qualified. That's the reasoning for that. Not to say that this would happen in this case, but that's why we don't, when the hiring manager or the department head gets the applications, they're assured that that person is minimally qualified for the position. So that's something that citywide that it comes up from time to time when department heads want to be a part of the screening process, and that's something we've been really consistent in saying that we're not going to allow that. But other thing we're saying is that if there are questions, or if they have questions, Jennifer will get with that hiring manager, or they can always come to me if they have questions about an applicant, and we will deal with those. And another issue that we had, excuse me, is that the physical ability test, or the CPAT, has to go before they have to have a conditional offer before they do that CPAT. There was I have an email here from Nate Miller when he was employed here as assistant city attorney. Evidently, this came up earlier, and the recommendation from legal is that they have to have an offer before they do the CPAT test. And that's consistent with in the normal city. Before we send them for a physical test, they have to have a conditional offer. That's actually a law and a best practice, because that keeps us from saying that, hey, you have this disability or whatever, and we're not going to hire you. So they have the offer before they do that. So the sequencing of that would not work. And there was the last one is under simultaneous processes. It's under the second one, it says the psychological eval will be scheduled before the PFC interview, but will only take place if the candidate is approved by the PFC. If the PFC does not approve the candidate, psychological evaluation will be canceled. And we said this is not doable, because once we schedule that, we have to pay for it. So if they cancel it, we still have to pay for it. So that's not doable to have that in that simultaneous process. So, but those are the only couple of things that we found in the sequencing in the fire request.
Okay. And I guess my suggestion would be then if both you and then the fire chief and can work together to sort of iron out whatever differences those are, so that we have a solid agreed upon proposal.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just expand on that a little bit. I think what we were trying to accomplish with the first one was, like, we just got into the CVTC hiring process, which is a consortium with the technical college over there in the Chippewa area. And what we're seeing is what we can do in that process, when they send the emails to myself and they send a separate one to HR, Jennifer can see some things that I'm not allowed to see by law and things like that. But what I can do is interview or look at applicants that don't necessarily meet our minimum qualifications. And I think that's what we're kind of looking at doing is what HR and the fire department have done to this point is be able to look at applicants and maybe move them along quicker rather than wait till the process closes. And it kind of the same idea here: who's applying, how long before they get their qualifications, is it worth an interview, and that sort of thing. So I think that what we're trying to do there is just look at them a little sooner, and the HR director and myself and Justin will definitely talk more about that. I wanted to give a little background on the thought process there, as well as the CPAT. A lot of times, especially through CVTC, these applicants know they have to get it, and they take these tests through the tech, and hopefully a lot of them have their CPAT before they apply. But in a lot of cases now, they're not having the opportunity because not a lot of places outside of NTC here in Wausau offer it as often as they do, especially in the winter. So the CPAT a lot of times is already done, and in some cases it's not, and we just ask them to get scheduled as soon as they can. at NTC or a different technical college. So just wanted to give a little background on what those things meant. And we'll definitely work with the HR director to smooth some of these things out, so.
Thank you. Any questions on those? All right. Then next on the agenda, we'll have the monthly presentation, the police department, unless, was that presentation as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
to be respectful of your time, my intention was if we could get that box checked today, I'd be really happy with the meeting. The only other thing I would tell you is, that's kind of a big deal going on right now. Our current labor agreement with the union and the members of our department that are in the union are everyone below lieutenant. So all our detectives, investigators, and patrol officers are members of their local. And that expires December 31st of this year. So as well as for the fire department, the same is true. So we have had our initial meeting with the union to negotiate, both the HR director and myself, and then the union board. So far, so good. I'll just say publicly that we are so fortunate when I look at other departments throughout the state and hear about their experiences and relationships with their union. We all want the same thing. And every time there's an issue or a contractual issue, our union takes into account what's in the best interest of the community, and we sit down and we figure it out. We had talked about, like, if we can't figure it out, the union contract has us go to arbitration. And I don't know anything about arbitration because in 25 years we haven't gone there. So we managed to settle every issue we have with them, as well as every contract. So I'm very optimistic we'll be able to do the same thing, and we'll have a contract before the end of the year.
All right. Thank you. Appreciation from the commission. And next up, monthly presentation of the fire department update.
I'll also make this pretty quick. I'll reflect a little bit as well on the process of negotiating the new contract. I've been on one side of the table or the other for the past 13 or 14 years, 5 years as union president, and then of course as management coming through after that. And this, I'll compliment our local 415 as well as our HR director, and this being one of the smoothest openings of contract negotiations I've ever been a part of. And we really appreciate that with HR director James Henderson as well as our local and coming to conclusion. So I'm also optimistic of how quick and smooth this process will go. So we'll keep you updated as that goes on. The other part is I want to update you guys on, Justin had already, Deputy Chief Bluth, I should say, has already talked to you about how short we are with 7. We actually had another resignation last week, so we're 8 short with 4 on light duty this week, and for the foreseeable future with 2 of them being on light duty throughout the end of the year and coming into next year. So we're not in a good way in the fire department right now as far as staffing goes, and the applicants are few and far between. Well, we had 1 through CVTC, and we have 2 through the city that aren't even qualified to interview after speaking with Jennifer. So we're looking for more ways and always looking for better ways to recruit, and we're working on that on a daily basis right now. So we're very short with a lot of overtime, but we're working on it and moving forward. On the positive side of things, we do have a firefighter paramedic as well as our community care paramedic starting on the 30th of this month, next Monday. So we're looking forward to getting the community care paramedic ball rolling and getting him on the streets, as well as a new firefighter paramedic who will be joining C Crew. And then we had 1 more that's been in our queue for a while. She just passed her CPAT, and we're going to work on getting her through the psych eval and the physical and getting her started in the very foreseeable future. So we do have a couple good things working out, but we got a lot of work to do. So that's it for our update.
All right. Any questions? All right, thank you. I'll gratitude from the commission. All right. Then the next meeting will be scheduled for Monday, October 28th at 7:30 a.m. right here in City Hall, Council Chambers.
We can't use the council chambers that morning.
Okay.
They're doing some absentee voting in here, so we can either meet in the Maple Room or at the PD if it would be available. So that's up to you guys as to where you'd like to meet.
Okay. All right, the next meeting will be at the police department in the community room. And again, that will be at 7:30 a.m. on October 28th. All right. And again, I thank you to the commission, the chiefs, departments, and the mayor. It's truly been a pleasure. And I will definitely miss this community and miss you all. Is there any further discussion?
William, I'm just curious, what is the process now for the commission? Like, what do we,
For,
the next meeting and putting it, new officers?
for replacing me? That is the mayor's job. So we have spoken, and so the mayor has some potential candidates in mind that he'll be bringing forth. All right. Is there any other questions?
And then we vote on positions at the,
Yeah, so will Cheryl, are you going to run the meeting next week or next month?
I-
What,
Then I
it happens.
yeah, I guess,
oh, I am?
yeah,
Okay.
I was going to,
Okay, I guess I didn't, okay, I'll run the meeting.
okay. All right, thank you. All right, is there any further discussion? If not, may I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned, thank you.